Imagine waking up one day, the weight of the world pressing down on you with each breath you take. You stare at the ceiling, the echoes of your thoughts reverberating in the silence. The list of things you should be doing, the promises you've made to yourself, are all there in your mind, yet somehow nothing changes. You feel trapped in the exact same place you've been for years. The days feel long, yet the years pass by in a blur. What if I told you that this feeling, the sense of being stuck, powerless in the face of life's challenges, is not a random occurrence? What if this is something we're all conditioned to believe? But that doesn't have to define you. You may feel like a victim of your circumstances, but what if this belief is the very thing keeping you trapped? Before you dismiss this as another motivational speech, let me ask you this. When was the last time you questioned the stories you tell yourself about why things can't change? About why you're unable to move forward? We've all been there. The voice inside your head, endlessly repeating, "I can't do this. This is who I am. This is how it will always be." Now imagine something radically different. Imagine you could wake up tomorrow, and the weight of the world that presses down on you, every setback, every failure, every disappointment, was gone. Not because your circumstances have changed, but because you no longer define yourself by them. What if you could see your life not as a series of unlucky events, but as a series of opportunities for growth? It's a question that shakes the very foundation of how we view ourselves and our place in the world. Is it possible to stop feeling like a victim of your circumstances? I'm sure you've heard the phrase, "You create your own reality." But how many times have you dismissed it as a motivational cliché? The problem isn't that we don't hear these words. The problem is that we don't believe them. The weight of your circumstances feels too real to be shrugged off by a simple phrase. But what if everything you've been taught about your limitations is an illusion? Before we move forward, I want you to do something. Pause for a moment. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, am I truly a victim of my circumstances, or have I just accepted that role? If you're ready to uncover the truth behind your limitations and reclaim your power, then hit that subscribe button, because this journey is just getting started. This is the beginning of your transformation. Stay with me, and we'll dive deeper into why we've been so conditioned to see ourselves as powerless, and how you can begin to break free from it. Ready to challenge everything you think you know? Let's move forward. The first step to breaking free is understanding why we feel trapped in the first place. The truth is, this sense of victimhood isn't just a random emotional response. It's deeply embedded in our psychology, in the way our brains have been wired over centuries, influenced by both our individual experiences and the society around us. Let's take a moment to consider this. What if the stories you've been telling yourself are not your own? What if they're the result of a deep psychological conditioning, so subtle and pervasive that you've never questioned them? There's a reason you've learned to feel like a victim. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to change it. And the first thing you need to realize is that this feeling of victimhood, this belief that your circumstances dictate your worth, is something that has been carefully constructed over time by both society and your own mind. Think about this. Who benefits from you believing that you are powerless? Philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche understood that our identity is shaped by the forces around us, particularly those in power. For centuries, human beings have been conditioned to accept their place in a rigid social hierarchy. Those who had power kept others in line by reinforcing the idea that they were powerless to change their circumstances. And if you don't question these societal constructs, you'll unknowingly internalize them, believing that your position in life is determined by forces far outside your control. But it's deeper than just societal pressure. Your own mind, shaped by past traumas, disappointments, and failures, has internalized this victim mentality. Carl Jung, one of the most profound psychologists to ever live, described how the unconscious mind plays a dominant role in our lives. He argued that we are all living with an unconscious narrative, one we're often unaware of, that directs our actions, thoughts, and perceptions. This narrative, shaped by past wounds and learned helplessness, keeps us trapped in a loop of self-pity and despair. Imagine for a moment that your unconscious mind is like a mirror, reflecting the beliefs that have been instilled in you since childhood. You can't do this. You're not good enough. It's too hard. Just give up. You've heard these voices before, haven't you? They are not your true voice. They are the voices of everything that has ever told you that you're not capable. And the thing is, these voices are not truth. They're learned responses to life's challenges, responses that you have the power to unlearn. And then there's the idea of learned helplessness, a psychological concept introduced by psychologist Martin Seligman. Through experiments with animals and humans, Seligman discovered that when creatures are repeatedly exposed to uncontrollable stressors, they eventually stop trying to change their situation altogether. This phenomenon, known as learned helplessness, explains why so many of us, when faced with adversity, believe that there's no way out. We stop fighting. We stop trying. But here's where it gets tricky. This learned helplessness becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You begin to internalize your lack of control, and soon, the thought of change becomes so foreign, so uncomfortable, that you avoid it entirely. The very idea of taking responsibility for your life feels alien, like you're being asked to rewrite your own history. But why do we stay stuck in this mindset? Why do we continue to live as if we have no control over our circumstances? Philosophers like Arthur Schopenhauer would argue that it's because human beings are driven by an insatiable will to live, but this will is constantly at odds with the suffering inherent in life. The tragedy of existence, Schopenhauer said, is that we are forever chasing desires that ultimately lead to pain and disappointment. In other words, our suffering becomes a constant companion, and in trying to avoid it, we become passive victims to the world's cruelty. You see, it's not that we don't have the strength to overcome life's challenges. It's that we've become so conditioned to expect suffering and defeat that we can't even imagine a life where we're in control. But the tragedy lies not in the circumstances themselves, but in the way we respond to them. Are you starting to feel the weight of this paradox? The more you accept the idea that you're a victim of your circumstances, the more you entrench yourself in that very identity. And the deeper you sink into this mindset, the harder it becomes to break free. This is where we are right now, standing on the edge of realization. It's no longer just about your circumstances, it's about your response to them. And that is where your true power lies. But how do we move beyond the shackles of learned helplessness and social conditioning? How do we begin to see ourselves not as victims, but as active participants in our own lives? We've just scratched the surface of why we fall into the trap of seeing ourselves as victims. But understanding the psychological roots of this mindset only takes us halfway. The real danger, the deeper issue, lies in how this belief silently shapes our lives, how it influences our choices, our relationships, and even our society at large. Let's take a closer look at how this belief in our victimhood subtly governs our daily lives and interactions. Imagine that every time you step into a situation, whether it's a job interview, a relationship, or a challenge at work, you are unknowingly operating under the assumption that you are powerless. Your mind doesn't even question it. Your subconscious has already decided that the deck is stacked against you. This is where the unseen consequences begin. At a neurological level, your brain is constantly processing information, and every thought or belief you hold, whether conscious or unconscious, triggers specific neural pathways. When you believe that you are a victim, these pathways reinforce a cycle of defeat. Essentially, your brain is constantly primed to look for evidence of your own helplessness, filtering out opportunities, and locking you into a feedback loop of inaction. It's no longer just a belief. It's a neurochemical reality. Think about the concept of cognitive biases, mental shortcuts that the brain uses to make decisions quickly. These biases are often based on past experiences, but they also shape the way we perceive new situations. For instance, one of the most common biases is confirmation bias, where we seek out evidence that supports our existing beliefs and ignore anything that contradicts them. If you've been telling yourself for years that life is unfair and that you're destined to fail, you'll unconsciously filter out all the evidence that says otherwise. You'll ignore the opportunities, the support from others, or even the chance to take risks that might lead to growth. This in turn reinforces your feeling of being a victim, cementing the belief that your circumstances are unchangeable. Let's bring this into a more personal realm. Think about the times you've been in a conflict, whether with a friend, a partner, or a coworker. When you feel like a victim, the way you approach these interactions changes. Instead of seeing the situation as something that can be resolved through collaboration or understanding, you may approach it defensively. You might find yourself retreating or blaming the other person entirely. It's as if you've already decided that the outcome is beyond your control, and so you no longer engage in the process of change or resolution. And it's not just about how you interact with others. The consequences stretch into your relationship with yourself. We're all aware of the power of self-talk, the constant stream of thoughts and judgments that run through our minds. When you see yourself as a victim, your inner voice becomes harsh, demanding, and unforgiving. It reminds you of all your failures, your shortcomings, and your limitations. This self-critical voice keeps you trapped in a perpetual state of doubt and fear. You may start to believe that this is who you are, unworthy of success, of happiness, or of peace. This internalization of victimhood distorts your self-image and prevents you from acting in ways that might lead to change. The consequences of this belief stretch beyond the personal into the social. Society, as a whole, has also internalized these narratives. Think about the way we view poverty, inequality, and systemic issues. It's all too easy to think that the circumstances someone faces, poverty, discrimination, or a lack of education, define their future. And in many ways, society reinforces this narrative. People are often seen as victims of their circumstances, with little regard for the individual capacity to change or rise above those circumstances. This creates a culture of passivity, where both individuals and entire communities believe they are at the mercy of forces beyond their control. It becomes a self-perpetuating cycle of despair. Those who feel trapped in their circumstances may not have the strength or support to break free, not because they are incapable, but because they've been conditioned to believe that change is out of their hands. But the most insidious consequence of all is the erosion of personal agency. You may think that by accepting the role of the victim, you're protecting yourself from disappointment or failure. But what you're really doing is giving up your ability to act. When you don't believe you can change your circumstances, you stop trying to improve them. You stay in unhealthy situations, in dead-end jobs, in relationships that don't nourish you. You settle for the life you think you're stuck with. And that's the ultimate tragedy. The moment we start seeing ourselves as victims, we start relinquishing our ability to influence the course of our own lives. Every time we reinforce the idea that we're powerless, we give away a little more of our autonomy. Over time, this self-imposed helplessness turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy, where our belief in our inability to change becomes the very thing that keeps us stuck. So why do we stay here? Why do we allow ourselves to believe that we are victims, despite the evidence that we can change? The trap has been set. You've internalized the victim mentality, conditioned to believe that your circumstances define you. But here's the unsettling truth. You don't have to live like this. It's time to break free from the cycle that has bound you for so long. But the way out isn't easy. It requires a radical shift in perspective. A shift so profound that it challenges everything you thought you knew about yourself, about your limits, and about the world around you. This shift begins with a powerful realization. Your circumstances do not define your identity. The key to freedom lies in separating who you are from the life you lead. Imagine for a moment that you are standing at the edge of a cliff, looking out over a vast and dark ocean. The wind howls in your face, and the world below seems impossible to conquer. You've always been told that this is your reality, that you are bound to this edge, unable to cross. But what if this cliff, this edge, wasn't your final destination? What if it was merely a vantage point, a place from which you can choose to soar? That's the first step toward breaking free. Choice. You might wonder, How can I choose when I have no control over my life? How can I escape the weight of my circumstances when they feel so real? This is where the concept of personal agency becomes critical. You've been conditioned to think that your power is limited, that your circumstances govern your actions and decisions. But this belief is rooted in the false idea that you are a passive observer in your own life. In reality, you are the creator of your own experience. One of the most radical shifts you can make is to acknowledge that you have the power to choose your response to life's challenges. No matter what life throws at you, whether it's loss, failure, or hardship, you always have the choice of how to respond. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust and a psychiatrist, famously said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Frankl's words are a call to arms against the victim mentality. He endured unimaginable suffering, yet he chose to find meaning in the midst of it. He chose to reclaim his power over his own mind, even when everything else had been stripped away. That is the essence of breaking free. It's not about escaping your circumstances, but about realizing that you have the power to redefine them. So what does this look like in practice? Let's break it down. 1. Recognize the illusion of control. The first step in reclaiming your power is to accept the truth. You can't control everything. Life will throw curveballs. People will disappoint you. Bad things will happen. But here's the profound shift. What you can control is your response. This is the essence of personal responsibility. No longer will you see yourself as a puppet to fate, but as an active participant in your own story. You are the author, not the victim of the narrative. Take the example of someone who loses their job. It's easy to slip into a victim mindset, thinking, "I'm unemployed because I'm not good enough," or "the economy is terrible," or "my boss is unfair." These beliefs keep you stuck in a place of helplessness. But when you shift your perspective, you begin to ask questions like, how can I use this challenge to grow? What opportunities might this open up for me? Suddenly, the situation changes from one of victimhood to one of possibility. 2. Reclaim your narrative. Your life has been shaped by stories. Stories about who you are, where you come from, and what you can achieve. But most of these stories are not your own. They've been written by society, by family, by the expectations others have placed on you. To break free, you must begin to rewrite your story. Think about the labels you've accepted over the years. Labels like lazy, unlucky, or not good enough. These labels may have been assigned to you by others, or by your own internal narrative, but they do not define your potential. You have the power to strip away those labels and replace them with a new empowering story. This is where philosophy becomes a powerful tool. The existentialists, particularly Jean-Paul Sartre, understood that we are condemned to freedom. We are free to choose our own path, even in the face of a meaningless or indifferent world. The key is to embrace this freedom, to take ownership of your story, and to act as though you are already the person you aspire to become. The change doesn't come from waiting for circumstances to shift. It comes from changing your internal narrative and taking action based on who you choose to be. 3. Embrace the process of growth. Here's where the concept of growth mindset becomes crucial. Carol Dweck's research on growth versus fixed mindsets has shown that the belief in the ability to grow and improve is a game changer. Those with a fixed mindset believe their abilities are static. They are born with certain talents and limitations. On the other hand, those with a growth mindset believe that skills, intelligence, and character can be developed over time. To break free from the victim mentality, you must embrace a growth mindset. Every failure, every setback, becomes an opportunity for growth, not a confirmation of your inadequacy. The key is to reframe challenges as opportunities for learning and self-improvement. When you start viewing setbacks through the lens of growth, they no longer have the power to define you. 4. Radical self-compassion. One of the most powerful tools in breaking free is self-compassion. It's easy to fall into the trap of self-criticism when you're feeling defeated. You tell yourself, "I'm not good enough. I always mess things up," or "Why can't I be more like them?" These self-critical thoughts only reinforce your victimhood. But when you treat yourself with kindness and understanding, you begin to step into your power. Self-compassion doesn't mean letting yourself off the hook for mistakes. It means acknowledging that you're human, that everyone has setbacks, and that these setbacks don't define your worth. By practicing radical self-compassion, you give yourself the freedom to rise above past mistakes and continue moving forward. Here it is, the moment that everything hinges on, the final realization that will shatter the illusion of victimhood and free you forever. You are not your circumstances. What if everything you've struggled with, the endless cycle of blame, the feeling of being trapped, the belief that life is happening to you not with you, was built on a lie? The truth is, you are not bound by what has happened to you. Your past, your failures, your pain, they do not define who you are. This realization is liberating. It's a shift so profound that it makes all previous suffering feel like it was leading you to this moment. The key is not waiting for life to change, but realizing that you can change the way you engage with life. The most powerful truth is this: you are free to choose. You are free to choose how you respond, how you act, and who you want to become. You are not a victim to circumstances, but the creator of your own experience. And once you realize this, everything changes. Your identity, your possibilities, your power, they all come from within. So what will you do with this freedom? Will you continue to live as if you are bound by forces outside your control, or will you step into your true power and rewrite your story? The choice is yours.